Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode, Jeffery Sinclair. Jeffery Sinclair was born on Mars on May 3rd, 2218. The son of a career military officer, David Sinclair, and a professor of North American literature, Jim Sinclair. Jeffery also had a brother, Malcolm. His father flew for Earth Force during the Dilgar War and was eventually killed during the conflict, though not before being present at the liberation of Balos. According to Jeffery, his father never forgot what he saw there. Jeffery Sinclair enlisted in Earth Force in 2237. During his first year at the Earth Force Academy, Sinclair met John Sheridan for the first time when he made the unfortunate mistake of getting his attention by spilling a tray of food on him. Since Sheridan was a dutiful upperclassman, he decided to spend as much time as possible making Sinclair's first year a living hell. In 2240, Jeffery was promoted to fighter pilot, and less than a year later he was promoted to squadron leader. Due to his rapid rise through the ranks, it was rumored that Sinclair was on the fast track to making admiral. In 2243, Sinclair served as a flight instructor at the academy when he met Cadet Catherine Saki while she was in her second year. During her first instructional flight with Sinclair, he almost made her black out after he performed a hairpin backward loop followed by a spinning barrel roll. She would later admit to herself that it was love at first sight. This was the beginning of a 15-year on-again, off-again relationship where the two would often argue and go their separate ways for years at a time, only to get back together and begin a new cycle. After the Earth-Minbari War ended in 2248, Saki left Earth Force for a life as a professional planetary surveyor and independent contractor. As a squadron leader, Sinclair fought the Battle of the Line, the last major battle in the Earth-Minbari War. During the course of the battle, his squadron was destroyed by the Minbari in mere minutes, resulting in the deaths of many friends. Sinclair's own fighter was badly damaged, rendering the weapons disabled and the engines failing. In a last act of defiance, Sinclair attempted to ram one of the Minbari cruisers. Something passed in front of his eyes and he apparently blacked out. When he awoke 24 hours later, the war was over. The Minbari had surrendered. The surviving Earth instruments showed his ship missing for a whole day, but it was officially ruled as an instrument malfunction. Sinclair wondered what had happened to him during those missing 24 hours for many years, though for 9 years he did not seriously question the idea that he had blacked out due to acceleration. The truth of why the Minbari surrendered became clearer over time. Sinclair's ship had been disabled and brought aboard the Minbari capital ship containing the Grey Council. Sinclair was briefly tortured for information, leading to a shocking discovery. Sinclair, they believed, had a Minbari soul. Restrained in the Great Council chamber, Delenn uses the Triluminary, and it glowing in Sinclair's presence, she declares that Sinclair has the soul of Valen himself. In actuality, the Triluminary showed it because it was responding to his DNA, encoded in the transformational matrices when the future Sinclair used it in the year 1260 to become Valen. Delenn interpreted this as a sign that the humans had an important part to play in the coming Shadow War. During his interrogations by the Council, Sinclair saw Delenn, although he did not know her at the time. The Minbari used a telepath to suppress his memories of the entire event. Sinclair was one of about 200 survivors of the battle, which claimed over 20,000 human lives. He was awarded a special medal in recognition for his service on the line, but he rarely spoke about the event in the immediate years following, as he could not rationalize why the Minbari would surrender and why he had survived. The Babylon Project. When Babylon 5 went online in March 2256, Sinclair was chosen to be in charge of the station, even though several others were in line in front of him. Sinclair was surprised when they informed him, as he was comparatively low-ranked compared to many of the other candidates. He would learn later that he was specifically chosen at the behest of the Minbari, who were the first to sign on to Babylon 5, but only on the condition that they were allowed to choose the station commander. He brought on board Laurel Tashamia as his second-in-command, keeping his promise to her. His friend Michael Garibaldi comes on board January 2257 as his security chief. After completing his Mars security assignment, their previous experience on Mars had left Sinclair with a deep trust in Michael. Their first year was relatively quiet as many different races came to the station and signed on to the project. Finally, the Vorlon Empire agreed to send an ambassador, which meant that all 5 of the major powers would have a voice in the Babylon 5 Advisory Council. On February 25, 2258, Lieutenant Commander Susan Ivanova replaced Lieutenant Commander Laura Tashemiya. The Chief Medical Officer, Benjamin Kyle, was also recalled to Earth Dome, returning to his post as head of xenobiology research to work with the president. Sometime later, the station picks up strange tachyon emissions from Sector 14, an area 3 hours from Babylon 5 and the site where Babylon 4 disappeared. Soon afterwards, the lost station itself appears. Sinclair responds to a plea for help from the station. He assembles a large team of volunteers to help pilot the ships in evacuating Babylon 4's skeleton crew. Sinclair, Garibaldi, and a handful of others board the station to investigate before calling the rest of the rescue teams in. They meet Major Cransit, who was in charge of overseeing the station's construction, who explains that inexplicably the station had become unstuck in time. The same phenomenon causes time flashes where someone can be seen in the event of their own life, forwards or backwards in time. Sinclair sees a vision of himself on B5 when it was under attack by an unknown enemy. Garibaldi is holding him back. Major Cransit also introduces Sinclair to an alien named Zathras, who seems to recognize Sinclair at first, but then admits his mistake. Zathras admits that he is part of a team that has come to steal the station and move it through time to serve as a base of operation for the Side of Light in a great and terrible war. Sinclair, Garibaldi, and Cransit also behold a being Zathras calls the One, but they cannot identify the being, as it is wearing a spacesuit. As the tachyon emissions resurge, threatening to pull the station once again through time, the last of the crew begin to evacuate. Zathras is trapped by a fallen column. Sinclair tries to free him, but is unable. Zathras insists that Sinclair leave without him, telling him that he has a destiny that he must fulfill. Sinclair and Garibaldi leave on the last shuttle just before the station disappears again. Sinclair impedes a quarantine of Sector 14. The end of the beginning. By December 2258, the Narn regime was on the move against the Centauri again, this time making aggressive moves in Quadrant 37. Sinclair was unable to mediate the dispute in the council. He approaches Jakar privately and accuses the Narns of overcompensating, following their revolution against the Centauri. He also tells Jakar he believes that they are all standing at a crossroads and is worried about what's coming. He seems to reach Jakar momentarily, although the ambassador insists that his people are just doing what they must. As the year comes to an end, Sinclair reflects on all the changes it had brought, comforted by Catherine in his quarters. After Babylon 5. A few days into 2259, Commander Sinclair is recalled to Earth. About a week later, it is announced that he is being reassigned as the Earth Alliance ambassador on Membar. When he arrives, he is finally told the full story about his capture at the Battle of the Line. The Membari learn during their questioning of him that he has a Membari soul. Sinclair soon meets the transformed Delenn on Membar, still not knowing that she is a member of the Grey Council. Their meeting is soon interrupted by several Membari, who claim to have found a long-range weapon and a map of the new leader's route in Sinclair's belongings. Suspected of an assassination attempt, Sinclair is immediately taken under guard. He is soon visited by Delenn, whom he tries to convince that it has been a setup. Delenn agrees and helps him and informs Sinclair that the warning about the assassination attempt came from Babylon 5. Meanwhile, back home it is implied that Sinclair tried to kill the Membari new leader because he suspected the Membari of being somehow involved in President Santiago's death. Aboard Babylon 5, Garibaldi and the new commander of the station, John Sheridan, do not believe in Sinclair's guilt. They begin their investigation. Ambassador Sinclair. Sinclair also learns about the coming of the Shadows. He becomes a leader of the Rangers, assuming the title Ranger 1, and takes the lodging in which Valen had lived 1,000 years ago, left unoccupied but perfectly maintained since his leaving Membar. His position as head of the Anashak and Earth's official ambassador to Membar allowed him to swell the ranks of the Rangers with humans, all of whom are trained on Membar to fight in the Great War the Membari have been predicting for 1,000 years. In 2260, after Earth declared martial law and Babylon 5 declared independence, Sinclair is approached by Wraithen with a container sealed by Valen over 900 years earlier, with instructions to be opened on that specific day. Wraithen revealed the contents to Sinclair, a letter addressed to him personally. After reading the letter, Sinclair immediately makes preparations to return to Babylon 5, taking his leave of Wrathan and the Rangers. Upon his arrival, he immediately meets with Captain John Sheridan and Delenn in the war room. Delenn quickly explains that they need to take the White Star to the Temporal Rift in Sector 14, that Babylon 4 had been stolen by them, or more properly, it will be stolen by them. She explains that during the First Shadow War, the Shadows were destroyed by Mimbar's great space station, and without a replacement, the Side of Light would have lost the war. The replacement was Babylon 4, stolen through time by them. Sinclair affirms what Delenn says, not disclosing at the time the contents of the letter. The White Star is also met by Zathras, who has brought the equipment necessary to pull the station through time, and Sinclair remembers him from when he went on board Babylon 4 the first time. Sinclair asks Sheridan not to bring Garibaldi along, fearing for what might happen if both of them encountered the same temporal field a second time. Led by Sinclair, they successfully travel back to 2254, and on board Babylon 4. They set up the equipment and bring the station to the year 2258, when Sinclair and Garibaldi had gone aboard the first time and evacuated the station. The effects of the temporal field, however, had indeed affected Sinclair the first time, and now that he encountered it again, it caused him to age about 20 years. After they evacuated the crew and re-entered Babylon 4 into this time stream, now at last Sinclair reveals the truth. The letter was from Valen, but in his handwriting. The only explanation is that he traveled back in time and became Valen. Delenn's metamorphosis had been foretold by Valen as a way of completing his own transformation. He explained to them that he could accept it, as it cleared up many uncertainties in his mind, and it was the only way. The others departed, leaving only he and Zathras to take the station into the distant past. Arriving in the year 1260 AD, Sinclair contacted the Vorlons. With the two of them aboard, Sinclair used a triluminary to enter a chrysalis and become a Minbari not born of Minbari. He presented Babylon 4 to the Minbari and introduced himself as Valen. Some time after Sinclair's departure, Sek Truvel, one of the few to share the secret of Sinclair's true identity, found a note addressed to Marcus Cole. Though there was no way to tell when the note itself was written, the sheets of paper were very old, and of a kind that could be matched as 1,000 years ago. The note read, "Continue to dream that better future. Perhaps we'll meet again. From both of us, our thanks and friendship." Thank you for watching the history of Jeffery Sinclair. Special thanks to the Babylon Project for all information you heard today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you have, thank you. And have a nice day. Bye-bye.